1315, the House of Habsburg marched into the mountains of Central Europe to restore what they called order. Their army moved with confidence, knights sealed in steel, war horses pounding the road, banners snapping in the alpine wind. To them, this wasn't a war, it was a routine show of power. No rival army, no real resistance, just mountain communities that would fall in line once the banners appeared. But hidden above those narrow paths were people who didn't look like soldiers at all. No polished armor, no noble bloodlines, no banners, only patience, knowledge of the land, and a shared refusal to submit. When the moment came, a single signal shattered the silence. Rocks tore loose from the mountainside, logs thundered downward, the road collapsed into chaos. Horses screamed, knights were thrown from their saddles, heavy armor became a prison instead of protection. Within hours, an army believed to be unstoppable lay broken among the mountains. This was Morgarten. To understand Morgarten, you first have to answer one simple question. Who believes they own the land and who refuses to accept that claim? The story unfolds in what is now central Switzerland. In 1315, this region wasn't a nation. It was a harsh alpine landscape of steep valleys, dense forests, and dangerous mountain passes. Three valleys sit at the heart of the conflict: Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden. They weren't rich. They had few towns, no great castles, and no royal courts, but their location made them powerful. These valleys sat astride key alpine routes. Anyone moving goods, money, or armies across the mountains had to pass near them. Control the roads, and you controlled trade. Control the courts, and you shaped daily life for generations. For centuries, these communities governed themselves. They chose their own judges. They managed their own tolls. They answered directly to the Holy Roman Emperor, not to nearby nobles. By both tradition and imperial law, they were not supposed to belong to any regional lord. But not everyone accepted that. To the east stood the House of Habsburg, wealthy, ambitious, and deeply entrenched in European politics. They controlled vast lands across what is now Austria and beyond. To them, power was meant to be orderly and hierarchical. Land near their borders should answer to them. Roads should pay them tolls. Judges should be appointed by them. From the Habsburg perspective, the mountain valleys were a mistake in the system. They lay inside Habsburg influence, yet outside Habsburg control. The conflict was inevitable. At first, the Habsburgs didn't attack, they applied pressure. Officials were sent into the valleys, local court rulings were challenged, ancient privileges were questioned. On paper, every move looked legal, administrative, reasonable. But to the people of the valleys, it felt like a slow occupation. Each decision chipped away at their independence. Tensions simmered for years until a dispute involving Schwyz and the Abbey of Einsiedeln, an influential religious institution backed by Habsburg interests, pushed things past the breaking point. Officially, it was a disagreement over land and legal authority. In reality, it was about who had the right to rule. The Habsburgs seized the moment. They declared the mountain communities disorderly and rebellious, a threat to stability. With that justification, military action became acceptable. The man chosen to enforce Habsburg authority was Duke Leopold I of Austria. Leopold didn't prepare for negotiation. He prepared for intimidation. He assembled an army meant to overwhelm before it ever fought. Armored knights, mounted retainers, infantry, banners flying high. This was power on display. The message was clear: resistance was pointless. His plan was simple: march through the mountain roots, enter the valleys, break resistance before it could fully form. He expected submission. What he didn't understand was this: if Habsburg control was imposed, the valley's independence would be gone forever. Their judges replaced, their land rights erased, their communities reduced to subjects. So Uri, Schwitz, and Unterwalden prepared, not to negotiate, but to survive. They knew they couldn't defeat knights on open ground. They couldn't match steel with steel. But they knew the mountains. They knew where roads narrowed, where horses lost footing, where a marching column became trapped by its own weight. As Leopold prepared to march, the valleys chose the battlefield. The Habsburg army moved at first light. Thousands of men advanced along the mountain roads, knights at the front, infantry behind them, wagons and supplies stretching the column far down the valley. From Leopold's position, the sight was impressive. Armor gleamed in the morning sun, hooves echoed off stone. This was an army meant to be seen. Crucially, it marched in column, not battle formation. Long, heavy, difficult to turn. And no one seemed concerned. High above the road, unseen, the defenders were already in position. They didn't gather in one mass. They moved quietly in small groups along forest paths they'd known since childhood. Local leaders chosen for experience, not title, directed the preparations. Their plan revolved around a single principle: don't fight the army, break the march. Days earlier, they had studied the route. They watched wagons struggle. They observed where horses slowed. They searched for one place where the army would be forced to compress. They found it near Lake Agary. Here, the road was trapped between water and steep rising ground. There was no space to maneuver. Once committed, the column couldn't turn, retreat, or redeploy. The ambush was carefully organized. At the highest points, strong men prepared rocks and logs. Their job wasn't to fight, only to release gravity at the right moment. Below them, fighters with halberds and hooks waited to pull riders down and stop forward movement. Further along the slope, reserve groups stood ready to seal off escape. Everyone knew their role. No one moved without the signal. Timing mattered more than numbers. Late in the morning, the Habsburg army entered the narrow stretch. Leopold rode at the front. He saw difficult terrain, not danger. The march continued. Knights were forced into single file. Infantry pressed close behind. Horses walked carefully, armor scraping against armor. The column thickened, men packed tightly together. Above them, the defenders waited. Only when the entire force was locked into the terrain did the signal come. Rocks crashed down first, smashing horses, blocking the road. The front stopped instantly, but the rear kept pushing forward. Seconds later, logs thundered into the mass, shattering formations and sending horses into panic. Then the defenders moved. They struck horses, not armor. They pulled riders sideways. Knights hit the stone road and couldn't rise. Fallen men and animals became obstacles, heightening the trap. Inside the column, panic spread. Orders dissolved into noise. Men couldn't move forward or back. Some were pushed toward the lake. In heavy armor, a single slip was fatal. Soldiers vanished beneath the water almost instantly. Within minutes, the Habsburg army ceased to function as an army. By the time Leopold understood this was a coordinated ambush, it was already over. The retreat wasn't ordered, it unraveled. Men fled in fragments, abandoning shields and weapons. Officers tried to rally units, but the terrain defeated them. Fear moved faster than authority. By early afternoon, the fighting ended. The defenders didn't pursue. They stayed on the heights, watching the survivors withdraw. The mountain fell silent. Morgarten didn't end with a dramatic final stand. It ended with realization. Across Europe, the news stunned the Holy Roman Empire. Armored knights, symbols of power and order, had been defeated by mountain farmers using terrain, preparation, and timing. For the Habsburgs, the campaign was a disaster. Their authority in the region was weakened. Expansion would no longer be easy. For Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden, the victory was transformative. They strengthened their alliance, committing to mutual defense. What began as local resistance became the foundation of a confederation. Morgarten isn't remembered for heroic charges or legendary warriors. It's remembered for something more dangerous. It proved that intimidation can fail, that preparation can overcome prestige, and that sometimes the landscape itself decides history. That is why Morgarten still matters.